Hey guys, tonight we're traveling far back, farther than the pyramids you're probably picturing right now. We're slipping down the Nile, beneath a Nubian moon so bright it silvers the river like poured mercury. You hear crickets clicking in the reeds, feel dry heat lingering even after sunset, and smell wood smoke curling up from a lone clay brazier. You approach a small hut, its entrance framed by woven palm fronds, where the glow of a single oil lamp spills onto the sand. Inside, a barber waits, but not the kind with sterile chairs and bad magazines. No, this one wears a necklace of dried figs, a belt of copper tools, and a smirk like he knows your secrets before you even sit down. This isn't just a haircut, it's a ritual, a performance, a trust fall with a man holding a sharpened blade. And yes, you probably won't survive this world without one, literally. It's not just about looking good, it's about avoiding lice, surviving spiritual attacks, winning favor in courtship, and preparing for the afterlife. The Nubian barber, he's your stylist, your therapist, and occasionally your last line of defense against supernatural sabotage. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe a bit, only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time. I love knowing where and when you're drifting off with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sand crunches under your bare feet as you cross the village edge. There's a hush here, broken only by the distant splash of a crocodile slipping back into the river. This is Lower Nubia, somewhere between present-day Sudan and southern Egypt, around 1500 BCE. And you're approaching the small barber's shelter, woven from reeds and clay, with just enough space for one or two anxious clients to squat under the low roof. You duck inside. The barber nods without a word. He gestures for you to kneel, then scoops cool water from a clay jar, splashing it into a shallow wooden basin. He's not in a rush, hums softly as he unwraps his bundle of tools: a curved copper razor, a flat, smooth stone, a reed comb, and something like a tiny bronze spoon, which you'll later find out is for scooping earwax. Lovely. As he dabs your forehead with a damp cloth, you begin to notice this isn't just hygiene. This is theater. He circles you once, mumbling something under his breath, maybe a blessing, maybe a very specific kind of ancient Nubian insult. Historians still argue whether these barbers were priests first, or if their magical role evolved from their closeness to bodies and rituals. Outside, a woman waits, arms crossed. You catch the glint of her nose ring in the lamplight. She's not here for a haircut. She wants advice, or gossip, or maybe a charm. That's what makes this barber different from the others you've imagined. He doesn't just shape beards, shapes lives. A noblewoman recently gave birth. The barber knew before the midwives. A merchant's son ran off with someone's wife. The barber helped disguise him with a quick hair reshape before he fled into the desert. Word spreads fast in villages like this, but it often starts with the snip of a blade and a whisper from a barber. You flinch slightly as the razor kisses your scalp, just a trim, he assures you. But you know better. This isn't just about vanity. You've seen lice infestations turn ugly. You've seen sweat-soaked scalps boil under the sun. You've seen how even a minor infection could send someone into fever dreams that never end. So yeah, a clean head. It's survival, plain and simple. Still, the way he's moving, careful and rhythmic, feels almost sacred. You realize that this momentous, seemingly simple grooming is tied to a bigger picture. Cleanliness is next to godliness, they say, and in ancient Nubia, barbers are gatekeepers to both. By the time he finishes, your scalp tingles. He rubs on a balm made of crushed frankincense and something that smells suspiciously like garlic, and steps back to admire his work. You feel lighter, sharper, maybe even a little taller. Outside, the stars are blazing like diamonds hurled across black silk. The air feels cooler now. You step out, touching your head instinctively. The world looks a little different when you're freshly trimmed, sharper, more defined, like everything's in focus. As you walk back through the narrow pathways of the village, you pass others, some still half-shaved, some freshly scented, some nervously waiting their turn. You notice how many eyes drift toward you now, how many nods you receive. A good cut means respect. It means someone trusted you enough to hold a blade near your throat and didn't flinch. And somewhere, deep in the back of your mind, You wonder how many secrets that barber knows. How many stories are hidden in the clipped ends of someone's hair, or in the way a man requests just a little more off the sides. You don't ask. You don't need to. You'll be back, because in Nubia, the night never really ends. It just softens, fades, and renews, like the gentle scrape of copper against skin, like the secrets only a barber can carry. You're back at the hut before sunrise. The reed roof rustles in the breeze, and inside, the barber is already busy. Not with clippers this time, but with conversation. A teenage boy crouches beside him, squirming as the barber oils his scalp. But it's not just about the cut today. No, this is training. The boy is an apprentice, learning more than where to part a widow's braid or how to keep a copper razor. From nicking the skin, he's learning the real art, how to read people like maps. You sit a gainless tense now, more curious. The air is fragrant with something sweet and musky. Probably myrrh, maybe goat butter. The scent hangs thick, clinging to your skin. Around you, pots of pastes and bundles of herbs line the walls. No shelves, just indentations in the clay, packed with whatever oils or charms might be needed today. The barber is explaining something in a low voice. The boy listens, wide-eyed. It's never just about the hair, the barber says. It's about what the hair says. You lean closer. That's not metaphor, it's literal. In this world, your hairstyle announces your tribe, your status, your relationship, your mood, your availability. A slight change in braid angle might mean you're mourning. A shaved patch could signal fertility, or readiness for marriage, or that you've lost a bet. Depends who's watching. In this little room, meaning is woven with every snip. Barbers in ancient Nubia weren't background characters, she were community anchors. If you were a young nobleman, you'd visit the barber before your first meeting with a merchant. If you were an elder about to give a speech at a temple, you'd stop by for a special oiling first. Even women, though often groomed by other women, would sometimes sneak in for special cuts, advice, or private charms best kept from the ears of busybodies. Because this guy, he knows things, and he helps people quietly, subtly, like trimming off the rotten end of a fruit without making a fuss. The tools clink together as he sharpens the blade. He doesn't just cut, he interprets. That boy you saw earlier, he's not just learning grooming techniques. He's memorizing a language and written in the geometry of curls, shaves, and the rhythm of the razor. Historians still argue whether barbers formally held political roles in Nubia, or simply acted as informal advisors. But the pattern is there. A barber who overhears a scandal might later help redirect a marriage proposal. A barber who notices a nobleman arriving early each week for a trim might subtly shift his schedule. To avoid a brewing confrontation, it's diplomacy with scissors. You watch as a woman enters, barefoot, eyes darting. She's holding a folded piece of cloth. Inside, a lock of hair, freshly cut. She places it in the barber's hands without a word. He nods. Then he disappears behind a curtain. You don't follow because you know. This is ritual. That hair could belong to a lover, a child, an enemy. What happens next might involve burning, burying, or tying it to a doll. Hair holds power, and the barber is the custodian of it. He doesn't ask why. He doesn't need to. You hear a distant chant, low and rhythmic, like a lullaby written for the gods. Then the curtain shifts, and the barber returns, hands empty. The woman bows her head and leaves without looking back. That's another thing, they trust him, more than most. A priest might demand your devotion, a ruler your obedience. But a barber, he gets your vulnerability, your scalp, your breath, close enough to smell the bread you had for breakfast. You don't fake your way through a haircut. Not in Nubia, not with that blade so close to your neck. Outside, the village is waking up. Goats bleat, pots clink, children run barefoot through alleys, chasing each other with wild abandon. But in here, time is different, slower, more precise. The apprentice wraps a cloth around your shoulders, dabs oil behind your ears, and begins brushing out your hair. It's meditative. Each stroke draws something out of you. Not just dust or sweet, but tension, worry, the static hum of daily life. It slips away, strand by strand. The barber pulls up a stool, examining your hair like a farmer inspecting soil. He asks how you've been sleeping, whether you've been sweating more than usual, if anyone's been looking at you strangely. You don't question these inquiries are standard here, because a barber isn't just interested in your style. He's checking for curses, illness, omens. He's reading your body like a scroll, looking for margins scribbled with danger. Tonight, a man comes in with a crooked smile and a scar on his cheek. The barber raises an eyebrow but says nothing. The man wants his beard shaped in a specific way, longer on the chin, sharp on the jawline. The style? Reserved for warriors returning from a successful raid. Which is odd, because no one in the village has heard of any recent campaigns. But the barber does it. No questions, no judgment, just the soft scrape of blade over skin. Still, later, when the man leaves, he turns to his apprentice and murmurs something you catch only the tail of. Mark the pattern. Something's coming. That's the kind of presence a Nubian barber hash off stylist, half watchman. And as your own hair begins to take shape, you realize you're not just getting a trim. You're being tuned, harmonized, adjusted for the rhythms of the world around you. And when you leave, it's not just your scalp that feels lighter, it's your whole body. You're not just seen, you're understood. You return just as the sun begins to press its hot palm against the horizon. The air smells like baked clay and wild thyme, and the wind carries traces of distant drumming. Inside the hut, the barber is laying out his tools again, but this time with a little more ceremony. Each item is unwrapped from soft linen, handled like an old friend. You step closer, curious, and hey, if you're expecting just a comb and some clippers, you're about to be pleasantly overwhelmed. The barber spreads the tools before you like a treasure hoard. There's a curved razor made of hammered copper. Its edge is impossibly thin, gleaming faintly in the low light. Beside it, a sharpened obsidian shard rests on a piece of goatskin, darker than midnight and sharp enough to split a hair just by whispering near it. You reach for it, slaps your hand gently. These tools aren't toys, they're legacy. There's also a polished tortoiseshell comb, its teeth worn smooth by hundreds of scalps. Little pouches of scented powder sit nearby, crushed lotus, ground frankincense, and what the barber claims is powdered carob seed. A half-melted ball of beeswax sits in a clay dish, ready to be warmed over a flame and used to stiffen braids or seal loose ends. And then, of course, the mirror. Except it's not a mirror. Not like you know it. It's a shallow bowl, lined with a silvery metalton, maybe filled with still water. No glass, just reflection. The kind that warps if you breathe too hard or blink too quickly. It doesn't give you a clean selfie, it gives you something truer. Something more intimate. You catch your reflection, now warped slightly, eyes too big, nose oddly dignified. You look like someone with stories, someone who's been through sandstorms and love affairs, and that one time you ate 3-day-old goat meat and deeply regretted it. In Nubia, even the way you see yourself feels ancient. The barber dips a finger in oil and starts rubbing it into the copper blade. Every tool, he says, has its own mood, its own appetite. And sure, you might chuckle, but you also notice how reverent he is. The copper isn't just sharpened, it's cleansed. The comb isn't just used, it's honored. Even the rag he uses to wipe down the blade is folded precisely, like a miniature shroud. Historians still argue whether barbers made their own tools or inherited them from masters. But many believe a single razor could stay in a family for generations, passed down like a birthright. You start to get it. This isn't a kit. It's a toolkit for transformation, fickies, social, sometimes even spiritual. The barber demonstrates for the apprentice now, showing how to hold the razor at a specific angle, not too steep, not too flat, just enough to peel away a layer of hair without peeling away anything vital. He tests it on a goat hide first. Then, the boy volunteers his own arm. There's a collective breath held in the hut, then the stroke. Smooth, clean, the boy winces, but grins. Next, they turn to oils. The barber opens a jar with a satisfying pop. It's thick with a greenish cream, something that smells like lime and smoke. He explains it's made from crushed palm seeds and resin, good for repelling insects and softening the scalp. Then he gestures to a tiny woven pouch inside, and eggs. Apparently, crushed into paste, they help strengthen hair follicles. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs, it works. And then the fringe item, a charm, tucked into a hidden fold of the tool wrap, a single cat's tooth, strung on twine. You lean in. He grins. For steady hands, he says. Whether it's superstition or science, you don't argue. His hands are indeed steady. A client enters, older man, silver at the temples, with the kind of voice that could sing a crocodile to sleep. He sits wordlessly. The barber oils his beard, runs the comb through it in long, deliberate strokes. The man closes his eyes. You watch how the barber switches tools mid-stroke razor to comb to oil, back to razor like a musician changing tempo without missing a beat. And now it clicks. These tools, they're not passive. They're partners, each one used with intention, guided by instinct honed over years. You'd think a haircut is just about hair, but in this hut, it's a map. And the tools, they're how you read it. The barber's hands move from the man's scalp to his temples, then to his neck. There's no need for words. The rhythm of the grooming speaks volumes. He wipes the man's face, dabs his skin with scented cloth, then lights a scrap of incense and waves it gently over the client's head. Not for smell, for sealing the ritual. When the older man rises, he looks taller, more composed, as if a layer of anxiety has been scraped away along with the hair. Later, after the clients are gone, the barber begins cleaning the tools again. Slowly, thoughtfully. You offer to help. He waves you off, but hands you a comb to hold, just to feel the weight of it. It's heavier than you expect, but it feels good in your hand, like something meant to last. He speaks softly now, almost to himself. A blade is only sharp if you know when to stop pressing. That stays with you, because out there, people might see hair as something to tame, but in here, it's a medium. And these tools, they're brushes on the canvas of the human spirit. You don't want to leave, but the night deepens and the hut grows quiet. The apprentice yawns. The oil lamp flickers, and as you step into the cooling air again, you glance back. You understand now. This isn't a barber's toolkit. It's a sacred altar in disguise. The next time you visit, it's early morning, and the Nile mist is still swirling like a dream someone forgot to finish. You feel the soft mud cling to your toes as you approach the riverbank. Today, the barber is outside down by the water, kneeling with a young man whose hair has already been damping with river spray. There's no mirror here, no oil lamp, no reed walls to hold in whispers. Just open air, wide water, and a people focused entirely on reflection. Literally, you squat a few feet away, trying not to disturb the scene. The young man stares into the river's surface, holding his breath. The barber, kneeling behind him, combs with both hands long, deliberate strokes that pull ripples across the water's face. You almost don't realize what you're witnessing. This isn't a haircut, it's a ritual. In ancient Nubia, mirrors were rare and expensive when they existed. They were polished metal, and they distorted more than they revealed. So what do you do when you need to see your own face clearly? You go to the one place everyone reflects equally, the Nile. The barber leans forward, whispering something. The young man blinks and nods slowly. You can't hear the words, but the posture says everything. Trust, expectation, maybe a little fear. Because let's be honest, having someone shape your hair by using a moving body of water as a mirror, that's not for the faint of heart, especially when it's a coming-of-age ritual. This isn't just a tidy up for appearances, it's a transformation. You enter the riverside a boy, but you leave it something more. The blade appears, gleaming in the pale light. The barber positions the young man's head just so chin raised, eyes locked on the shimmering reflection. He scrapes the first line across the scalp. The young man doesn't flinch. You hear the faint rasp of metal against skin, then see a strand drift into the water, caught by the current and swallowed downstream. The barber murmurs again. You catch the words this time. Watch who you become. Goosebumps rise along your arms. This is more than aesthetics. This is identity work. The barber isn't just shaving hair, he's revealing bone structure, cleansing old energy, tracing family lineage through patterns of curl and thickness. He's unlocking what's beneath, but in a way that feels intentional, like sculpting rather than removing. Historians still argue whether this riverside grooming was reserved for rites of passages. Some say only warriors and initiates underwent this kind of reflection-based haircut. Others believe it was simply a matter of practicality and beauty. We used warped metal. When the river gives you the whole sky, the young man rises after the final stroke. His hair now sits in a geometric pattern of lines and symbols, each design known to his tribe. One curve signals courage, another, readiness. The last, a prayer for calm in storms to come. The barber dips his hands in the Nile, rinsing the blade and comb without words. You notice he doesn't just clean the tools. He submerges them fully, holding them like offerings, as if the river itself has to approve before he can reuse them. And the river accepts. Back in the village, you notice the difference. People glance twice at the young man now. They nod with recognition, not because they see a new haircut but because they see someone who's changed in a way that counts. Later, a woman arrives, hair hidden beneath a scarf. She doesn't speak. The barber leads her down to the water, repeating the same process but this time with different tools. He uses a comb carved from bone, finer and more flexible. Her braids are undone slowly, lovingly. No rush. The river is still again, and she studies her own reflection, as if trying to remember something she lost. Maybe a love, maybe a name. The barber doesn't ask, he just combs. You wonder about this moment. Why the river? Why not the privacy of the hut? But then you see it, the way the water moves with every breath. How it distorts just enough to hide what's too sharp to face directly. How it reflects more than a mirror ever could your fears, your hope, your next version of self. The barber finishes with a strip of dyed cloth tied at the crown of her head. Red. It means protection. The wind lifts it slightly, and for a moment, she looks like a painting half divine, half undone. Barbers here aren't confined to corners and shops. They move with the seasons, with the mood of their clients, with the needs of the village. Sometimes, that means the reed hut. Other times, it means the river. He returns and sits beside you, drying the tools with a sun-warmed cloth. You ask him quietly if he ever cuts his own hair. He smiles. The river shows everything, but some things even I don't want it to see. It's a joke, but you feel the weight in it. Even those who shape others still wrestle with their own reflection. By evening, you're walking along the riverbank, tracing the same steps the clients took hours before. You look down into the water. Your reflection stares back, slightly melted, slightly unsure. You can't help but wonder, what would the barber see here if he looked? More importantly, what would he do? The air is thick with heat tonight, a weight pressing on your shoulders as you return to the barber's hut. But this time, it's not for a trim. It's to observe something you've only heard about in whispered barber's spells. You crouch at the threshold, where the glow from an oil lamp turns the walls of flickering amber. Inside, the barber is alone, chanting softly as he grinds something with a smooth river stone. His tone is low, steady, hypnotic. You ease into the shadows, not wanting to interrupt whatever magic or madness is in progress. On the mat before him lies a small braid of hair, not from a head you recognize. It's tied with red thread and surrounded by tiny symbols painted in ochre. There's a bowl of incense beside it, smoking gently, filling the hut with a scent that smells like cinnamon left too long in the sun. A clay figurine sits nearby, its head adorned with real human hair. Okay, this is officially beyond your average self-care routine. Barbers in Nubia weren't just stylists, they were keepers of personal energy. Hair, after all, was considered a powerful link to the soul. It was your identity, your scent, your memory woven into strands. And if you knew how to use it like this guy clearly does, you could do more than shape appearances. You could shape fate. You watch as he crushes herbs into a pasta, something dark and sticky. He applies it to the hair braid like an offering, still humming his spell. The words blur together, part Kushite, part something older. A dead dialect that maybe only barbers still speak fluently. Historians still argue whether these rituals were remnants of Egyptian influence or something uniquely Nubian, older than pharaohs and independent of pyramids. But what's not debated? The fact that people believed it worked. And if you're being honest with yourself, there's a certain charge in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes, or when your name is whispered by someone who shouldn't know it. Outside, a client arrives nervous. He's clutching a small pouch and sweating through his tunic. The barber meets him at the door, nods once, and lets him in. No words exchanged, just the quiet understanding of someone in need. The man sits, and the barber begins to cut. Nothing fancy, just a slow trim, short and tight. But you notice something odd. Each lock that falls is gathered with care. None of it hits the ground. It's wrapped in cloth and tied at the end. You glance at the pouch the man brought. It's open now, revealing 3 dried rose petals and a scrap of paper with a symbol drawn in charcoal. Love spell, protection charm. You don't ask. You already know. This haircut isn't cosmetic. It's intention incarnate. The barber finishes with a prayer, brushing the last bits of hair off the man's shoulders like he's brushing away doubt. Then he adds the wrapped locks to a clay jar filled with other bundles, each one labeled with something that isn't quite a name, but might be a memory. You ask, softly, what happens to the jars? He grins. Some get buried. Some get burned. Some wait until they're needed. You don't push further. Some mysteries deserve their corners. Later, a woman arrives with her daughter, a shy girl, barely old enough to form full sentences. Her hair is knotted, wild from weeks without brushing. The barber lights another bit of incense and beckons the child to sit. But before he even picks up the comb, he hums something, a lullaby to spell. She relaxes instantly, her eyes close. He works slowly, detangling each knot like it's woven with curses. He mumbles as he works, tapping her scalp now, and then in a pattern you suspect isn't random. Maybe a blessing, maybe a diagnostic. When he's done, he wraps a thin cord around a lock behind her ear, a marker, perhaps. He tells her mother it will protect her from sickness that travels through dreams. You're not sure if he's joking. He might not be. The fringe stuff, oh, there's plenty of it. Crocodile fat mixed with turmeric, used as both sunblock and spirit deflector. Hair powders made with burned fig leaves, meant to conceal someone from unfriendly eyes. There's even talk of a special oil that, when rubbed behind the ears, lets you overhear the conversations of the jealous. You ask about that one, he just winks. Some of it's surely nonsense. But then again, isn't most magic just misunderstood medicine? Or maybe most medicine is just demystified magic. You glance again at the clay jars, still lying neatly in the shadowed wall. Each contains someone's story, their fears, their hopes, reduced to strands and ash. They sit there quietly, waiting to be useful, waiting to be forgotten. And you realize this hut is more than a salon. It's a spellbook, a living, humming archive of human intent. You step out into the night, scalp tingling from the scent of incense, and imagine all the hair you've lost over your life, discarded, forgotten. Not here. Not in Nubia. Here, even what's cut away still matters, still whispers. Tonight, the mood is somber. You can feel it in the stillness of the air, in the way the wind has paused just outside the hut, refusing to intrude. The village is quiet, no drums, no laughter, no gossip. Even the goats seem to understand. Something final is happening. You duck into the barber's space, and it's been transformed. No lamp glows, only the soft flicker of 2 candles, one at the head of a woven mat, the other at its foot. Between them lies a body, recently passed, a nobleman, by the look of the jewelry still braided into what's left of his hair. Tonight, you're not here for the living. You're here for the dead. Barbers in ancient Nubia had many roles, but none more sacred or more intimate than preparing someone for their final journey. And while priests might chant and mourners might wail, it's the barber who gets the last touch, the final shaping of the body before it meets the gods. You kneel beside him, and the air is thick with resin's burning myrrh, crushed cedar, and something faintly minty. The barber is silent, focused. His hands glide across the nobleman's scalp, parting the sparse hair, inspecting the skin. Not for lice, not for vanity, for symbols. In Nubian belief, the state of the head could speak volumes to the afterlife. A clean, shaven crown signified clarity, wisdom, readiness. But it had to be done right. One bad cut, one drop of blood spilled unnecessarily, it could attract bad spirits, or worse, confuse the soul as it traveled between worlds. The barber begins with oil. He massages it into the scalp with rhythmic circles, pausing now and then to let the skin absorb it. The scent is heavy-live, beeswax, and something sharp, almost bitter. You realize it's crocodile dung. Yep. Ancient Nubians believed it protected the skin from sun and spirits alike. And hey, no one's going to argue with tradition now. You help hold the jar as he starts to shave. The razor slides across the skin like a whisper. No hesitation, no tremble, each motion deliberate, respectful. This isn't just grooming, it's storytelling. The barber's every stroke is a line in a sacred script, He trims the beard into a tight, ceremonial style. He shapes the eyebrows, smooths the cheeks. He even cleans the ears with a small, curved tool removing not just wax, but anything that might have clogged the nobleman's passage into the afterlife. Historians still argue whether barbers were officially part of Nubian funerary rituals, or whether their inclusion was more personal based on the family's wishes or the deceased's status. But it's clear no one else could do this. The barber wasn't just a practitioner, it was a guide. As the grooming continues, the man's face changes. He softens. He looks more like himself, less like a body, more like a memory, a preserved moment, a final version, as ready for the next world as any man can be. The barber opens a small pouch and removes a braid of hair already cut, sealed, and blessed earlier in the day. He ties it to the man's wrist with a strip of red cloth, not for fashion, for navigation. The soul, it's believed, can get lost if it doesn't recognize itself. This braid, it's like a spiritual compass. He steps back and nods once. The women of the family enter. Their hands tremble as they press kisses to the man's forehead. One of them, his daughter maybe, leans down to smell his hair and exhales deeply. Yes, she whispers, it's him. Outside, the funeral procession gathers. Drummers begin their slow, steady beat. A line of mourners forms, some weeping, others just watching. All of them glance toward the barber's hut as the nobleman is lifted and carried into the evening. And just like that, he's gone. The barber doesn't speak for a long time. He sits by the candles, sharpening his razor on a flat piece of river stone. The sound is soft, steady. You hand him a cloth, and he wipes the blade clean, though it hardly needs it. He finally says, "We cut away the confusion. What's left is the soul." You can't help but feel it, that something real happened here, that under layers of oil, under rituals and ash and carefully twisted cloth, there's a truth. When we die, we don't go alone. Someone sends us off, clean, seen, and remembered. As the last of the incense burns out, you realize this moment, the quiet brushing of the dead's brow, the shaping of their face, the scent of oils that linger even after the spirit has moved on. It's one of the most intimate acts in all of Nubian life. Not war, not marriage, not even birth, but death, given dignity through a barber's touch. The night after the funeral is thick with tension. You can feel heightened electricity in the village air that no incense can calm. Rumors swirl like desert sand. A theft from the temple, a chieftain's son gone missing, a prophecy overheard by someone who definitely wasn't supposed to be listening. And somehow, all eyes eventually drift toward the barber. He sits outside the hut tonight, legs stretched, hands idle for once. His tools are inside, untouched. The reed mat is bare. But people come by anyway, one by one, casually. A woman carrying dates, just in case. A fisherman pretending to fix his net too close to the door. Even a priest, not so sneakily, pretending to tie his sandals beside the water jar. They all want to know, what did the barber hear? See, here's the thing. Barbers in ancient Nubia weren't just trusted with your head. They were trusted with your secrets. People talked during grooming, loosened by the scent of oils, the lull of combs, and the intimacy of bare skin and blade. Whispers spilled like soapy water. And the barber, he caught them all, filed them away behind the same eyes that never blinked during a straight-edge shave. Historians still argue whether Nubian barbers were trained in intelligence gathering. Some call them informants, others call them diplomats. Either way, what's certain is that the barber knew everything. He just rarely said it out loud. Tonight, though, he's doing something different. He's drawing in the dirt. Quietly, lines, symbols, loops. You peer over his shoulder. It's not idle doodling, it's a map, not of land, but of relationships. You recognize shapes, a fish for the fisherman, a wave for the merchant who travels north, a flame for the gossip priestess with the loudest mouth in town. This is his web, and right now, it's tangled. He mutters under his breath, someone's lying. You offer to help. He smiles, hands you a reed stylus, and gestures for you to draw what you know. You hesitate, this is serious business. But then you draw a crescent for the boy who vanishes during full moons, a star for the woman who always knows when a storm is coming. The barber nods. This isn't some secret language, it's just observation, carefully collected, lovingly curated, and in Nubian society, where alliances could shift like riverbanks during flood season, the barber's quiet awareness was a stabilizing force. Someone stomps into the circle of firelight, a soldier, full of sweat and fury. He demands to know what's being said about him. The barber doesn't flinch. Instead, he lifts his hand, gently taps the reed to a circle he's drawn, an open palm. It means, "I know nothing, yet." The soldier hesitates, glowers, then mutters and walks away. You exhale. That was tense. The barber turns to you and whispers, "Sometimes silence is the sharpest blade." Later that evening, a young girl barely tenses on the mat. She's there for a braid redo, but her mother keeps glancing nervously at the street. The girl giggles while the barber works, unaware that every innocent hair twist is matched with questions murmured so softly you can barely catch them. Where was her uncle last night? Did he come home with blood on his tunic? Did she hear him whisper a name in his sleep? The girl giggles again. He smelled like old wine and fish heads. That's enough. The barber finishes the braid, gives her a honeyed fig, and sends her on her way. Then he adds a new symbol to the dirt, a coiled rope, a clue. You begin to see the pattern. Hair is the excuse. Conversation is the point. And the barber? He's the village's quiet detective, without armor, without a badge. Just blades and a talent for watching when others are busy talking. There's one more visitor tonight. A noblewoman, veiled and cautious. She kneels on the mat. Head bowed, no grooming this time. Just questions. Is it true? She asks. The barber doesn't reply right away. He lights a bit of frankincense, lets the smoke build, and only then answers, "Depends who told you." She says a name. He inhales slowly. Then he says, "He told me something different." That's all she needs. Her shoulders straighten, and she leaves. You don't know what they were talking about. But whatever it was, a decision was just made, and you suspect the ripple of it will touch many more shores than this one. By the time the coals burn low, the barber smooths the dirt map with a palm, erasing everything. "You're surprised we not keep it?" He shrugs. "I only draw what I can carry in my head, because in the end, that's the only safe place for secrets." As the stars blaze above you and frogs begin to sing in the distance, you realize the barber isn't just the guy who trims your bangs or styles your beard. He's the listener, the witness, the quiet storm beneath the calm. The next morning arrives with a chorus of clucking hens and the sharp scent of sweetgrass burning outside the barber's hut. You find him crouched low, hunched over a line of boys with heads bowed and knees dusty. They're about to become men, or at least they think so. Today is initiation day, and once again, the barber holds the blade. You settle on a nearby log as the sun pours down like warm honey. The boys are wrapped in ceremonial cloths, each marked with symbols in faded dye. One has a lion on his shoulder, wrapped bravery. Another has a scorpion, watchfulness. The smallest one wears no mark at all, just a nervous look and a cowlick defying gravity. The barber paces before them slowly. He doesn't speak yet. He lets them stew in their excitement and terror. Their eyes dart toward his hands, where the copper razor gleams. To be chosen first, an honor. To go last, a fate worse than stepping barefoot on an acacia thorn. Then, with no warning, he points to the lion. "You," he says. The boy practically sprints forward, plopping down on the woven mat with forced confidence. His friends snicker. The barber dips his fingers in scented oil lotus today, thick and floral, and massages it into the boy's scalp. It's a calming gesture, but the boy flinches anyway when the razor touches down. One smooth stroke, then another and another. With each pass, the crowd murmurs in approval. A group of older men lean against the hut's wall, offering unsolicited commentary like uncles watching a sports match. "Good head shape," one says. "His mother will be proud," says another. You notice something. The pattern of the shave isn't random. The barber carves a shape, careful lines and angles, almost like a maze. Historians still argue whether these styles were clan markers or spiritual symbols, or both. Some suggest they reflected status, others think they were maps of ancestral pride. But to the boys, none of that matters right now. All they want is to survive the razor and walk away taller. The lion finishes and rises, beaming. His friends hoot and slap his back. Next up, the scorpion, But before the razor touches him, the barber changes tool, switching to a comb carved from ivory. Softer, gentler. Why? Because, as the barber tells him with a half smile, your temper is harder than your scalp. The boy doesn't know if it's an insult or a compliment, maybe both. His design comes out more rounded, swooping curves behind each ear, like crescents cradling his thoughts. And now the cowlet kid. He steps up hesitantly. The barber tilts his head to the side, inspecting him like a painter stares at an oddly shaped canvas. Then he chuckles and says, "Wind has lived here." He taps the crown of the boy's head. "We will teach it patience." The haircut is slower. There's more teasing, more stops to oil, smooth, and recenter. But when it's done, it's beautiful. Sleek on the sides, a single twisted coil left on the crown, like a lighthouse of pride. You feel it before you understand it. This is more than ceremony. It's architecture. Each boy leaves the mat not just shorn but shaped. Their heads carry a message now. Something everyone in the village will read without needing a word. And just like that, it's the girls' turn. 3 of them sit down together. Each has already had their hair prepped with oils, and their braids undone. Their mothers hover nearby, fussing and whispering. The barber waves them off with a smirk. "Let them become who they are," he says. He begins twisting the first girl's hair into thin, tightly coiled spirals, starting from the nape and working up toward the crown. Each spiral gets a tiny bead threaded at the basard, white, black. The pattern, apparently random, but the barber knows better. Red for fire, white for clarity, black for strength. The second girl gets a row of braided lines running from front to back, like sun rays. The third receives intricate side braids, tucked into a heart shape behind each ear. You lean closer and ask, quietly, "Do they mean anything?" The barber shrugs. "They will." That's the magic of it. Some of these styles aren't ancient symbols. They're new stories, invented on the spot, meant to grow into meaning. And everyone in the village will interpret them differently. One of the grandmothers watching nearby leans over and says, "He once gave a boy 3 lightning bolts on his scalp. That boy grew up to be a storm singer." You don't know what a storm singer is, but it sounds impressive. As the last girl stands, her new style catching the light, the barber hands her a bit of twisted cloth dyed blue, the color of deep water. "From memory," he says. She ties it around her wrist, grinning wide. That evening, the initiates parade through the village, heads held high. Everyone stops to look. Compliments are offered, but so are careful observations. That boy carries ambition. Someone says, "That one's been marked for leadership." No one says these things out loud at a normal haircut, but an initiation cut, that's practically a declaration of prophecy. And later, as the fire dies down and the chatter softens into songs, the barber returns to his hut, humming softly. You ask if he remembers every style he's ever done. He doesn't even blink, of course, because once a style is cut into someone's life, it lives with you, like a scar, but chosen. The next time you visit, the heat is brutal, the kind of heat that clings like wet linen, turning every movement into a chore. The village has slowed down. Even the children, usually orbiting the barber's hut like curious Satalatasari, splayed in the shade, tongues out, faces sticky. And yet, inside the hut, the barber is hard at work. But he's not cutting today. He's weaving. You pause at the doorway, letting your eyes adjust to the dim light. The barber sits cross-legged with a pile of palm fibers beside him. Threads stretch between his toes and elbows like a sleepy spider forming a net. You watch his fingers twist, pull, and loop the strands into something vaguely hat-shaped, though with much more flair than your average sunshade. "What is it?" you ask. He smiles. "A hairpiece for the old ones." Turns out, wigs aren't just for royalty or theatrical flair. In Nubia, they're also practical, especially in old age, when hair thins, grays, or disappears altogether. And in a culture where hair signals status, energy, even health, losing it isn't just aesthetic, it's symbolic. So when your hair goes, the barber steps in. He holds up the nearly finished piece-bam fiber base, braided human hair layered in loops along the edge, and a soft piece of goat leather stitched into the underside for comfort. It's more than a wig, it's a crown, and each one is custom-made to match what the wearer used to have, or what they wish they'd had. You remember an elder named Tarek. whose hair had vanished long before you arrived. He still wore elaborate head wraps, but you'd always thought they were just tradition. Now you wonder, was one of those concealing a barber's gift? Outside, an older woman approaches, back slightly bent, her smile sun-softened. The barber gestures for her to sit. She does so gratefully, pulling a scarf off her head to reveal the thinnest wisps of gray clinging to her scalp. He hums something low and kind as he begins brushing. No razor today, just gentle hands. He braids what little hair she has left, not because it will hold, but because it's a respectful beginning. Then he lifts the hairpiece you just saw him finish and adjusts it onto her head, securing it with a thin twine wrapped around her ears like a delicate halo. You watch her face change in real time. There's pride there, yes, but something else, relief. Like a part of her has been restored, something time took, but the barber gave back. You can't fake that look. He tells her it's not permanent, just for special days. But every day is special, she replies, eyes twinkling. Historians still argue about the exact use of wigs and hairpieces in Nubian society. Were they spiritual tools, cosmetic enhancers, protection from the sun, or most interestingly, are they memory holders? Some evidence suggests that barbers used hairpieces to preserve ancestral styles. A grandmother's braids, for example, replicated exactly, then passed down like heirloom jewelry. A literal crown of memory. The barber confirms this, pointing to a shelf in the corner lined with wigs, each labeled with symbols burned into the wood. Some haven't been touched in years. Family asks for them during ceremonies. He says, to remember. You peer closer. One wig is tiny, child-sized. Another has a single long braid coiled like a snake. A third has a burst of reddish hair that glows in the lamplight. That one, the barber tells you, belonged to a warrior who never lost a match. People wear it when they need courage. You can't help but smile. The idea that hair could be borrowed courage, that's poetic, and very Nubian. Later in the day, a group of teenagers arrive, not for cuts but for inspiration. The barber lays out a few wigs like sacred scrolls, each with a story. The river coil, worn during floods to channel calm. The desert twin braid, said to cool the head with each sway. The wheat spiral, blessed by a fertility priestess. Some of the teens scoff, old stuff. One mutters. The barber raises an eyebrow and hands him the river coil. Try it. The boy does, just for fun. Within seconds, his swagger returns. Not bad, he says, adjusting the coil. He stands straighter. His voice deepens just a bit. Everyone notices. The barber doesn't gloat. He just says, hair is what you carry outside your bones. That line sticks with you. It's also, strangely, kind of true. Hair isn't like skin, it doesn't feel pain. But it remembers, holds scent, holds energy, holds stories you didn't even know you were telling. The day ends with one last visitor, a man who lost his hair to illness. He's quiet, doesn't meet the barber's eye, just sits, clutching a satchel like it's keeping him anchored. Inside the satchel, a bundle of old braids, his own, saved from years ago. They're dry, tangled, partially dead, but they're his. The barber nods, takes the braids, and gets to work. An hour later, the man walks out of the hut wearing something close to his former self. Not quite the same, but close enough to make a difference. And isn't that what we're all hoping for? Days later, you follow the barber down a narrow path toward the riverbank, where palm trees sway lazily and the water laps with a rhythm that's almost hypnotic. The heat has softened into a pleasant warmth, the kind that invites slow breathing and quiet moments. You notice how the barber moves differently, hair lighter, more thoughtful, as if the river's pulse syncs with his own. He stops beneath a towering acacia, roots twisting like ancient fingers into the earth. From his satchel, he pulls out a small clay pot filled with a thick, dark paste and a bundle of fragrant herbs tied with string. You ever wonder what made Nubian hair so resilient under the sun? He asks without looking up. You shake your head, watching the ants march diligently across a fallen leaf. Crocodile dung, he says matter-of-factly. You blink. Yeah, seriously, he grins. They mixed it with oils and ash to make a kind of sunscreen and conditioner. Sound gross, maybe, but it worked. He scoops some paste onto his fingers and starts rubbing it into the roots of a small bush nearby. demonstrating the texture. It's earthy and slightly gritty. Historians still argue whether this was a standard practice or a fringe beauty ritual performed by select tribes. Some believe the crocodile dung had antiseptic properties, while others think it was more symbolic, a nod to the power and protection associated with the crocodile god Sobek. You shudder a little, imagining the idea of applying dung to your scalp, but then you remember the fierce Nubian sun and the desert wind, and it makes a kind of rough sense. The barber's gaze drifts to the water, where children splash and laugh, their hair shining and slick with oil. Hair was a badge, he says softly, strength, status, protection. You lean in as he begins weaving the herbs into a small bundle. We'd also use henna, myrrh, and even powdered gems when we could afford them, not just for looks, but to honor the ancestors. He hands you the bundle. The scent is smoky and sweet, with a hint of something wild like earth after rain. As you breathe it in, he continues, barbers didn't just style hair, we were alchemists, healers, keepers of secrets. You ask about the tools, blades, combs, and mirrors. He chuckles. Mirrors were rare and precious, often made from polished bronze or obsidian. Looking into one was like peering into another world. Some say they could reveal your soul. You're skeptical but intrigued. Folklore says that if you caught your reflection at sunset, the mirror would show you not just your face, but your future. You can't help but laugh, imagining yourself nervously glancing into a bronze disc, hoping for a good hair day and maybe a winning lottery ticket. He laughs too, but then his smile fades just a little. Hair was life, he says, voice dropping. Cutting it was a right, but losing it, that was a kind of death. You remember the old man with the wig from the last section and wonder how much of his soul the barber helped him keep. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows as the barber starts packing up his herbs and paste. One final curious thought. Did barbers ever face danger? I mean, with all the secrets in politics? He nods slowly. More than you'd think. There were times when a wrong word, a misread symbol on a scalp, could mean exile or worse. Trust was everything. You realize that beneath the calm, methodical exterior of this village barber lies a story of risk and resilience. You trudge back toward the village, the scent of herbs lingering on your fingers, and the image of that crocodile dung sunscreen firmly etched in your mind. Because, in the end, the secret social lives of ancient Nubian barbers were about more than just hair. They were about survival. By the time you return to the village, dusk is settling like a soft blanket, and lanterns flicker to life, casting warm pools of light over cracked mud walls and dusty streets. The barber's hut is alive again, the hum of whispered gossip and clinking tools spilling into the night air. Tonight, something different is happening. You notice a small crowd gathered, their faces serious but curious. A traveler has Aravedklid in faded linen robes with a foreign accent and eyes sharp as obsidian. He carries a box of strange instruments, some gleaming silver, others carved bone. The barber welcomes him with a nod, but there's a flicker of caution in his eyes. You suspect the visitor is no ordinary client. Word travels fast in Nubia, especially when new customs or new barbers show up. The traveler speaks of distant lands, Egypt, Kush, even lands beyond the Nile's Great Bend. He tells stories of barbers who double as surgeons, using razors not just to groom but to heal wounds, extract teeth, and even perform rudimentary surgery. You can almost see the villagers leaning in, some fascinated, others skeptical. The barber listens, intrigued but reserved. He picks up one of the stranger tools, a long metal hook, and weighs it in his hand. Historians still argue whether ancient Nubian barbers adopted surgical techniques from Egyptian healers or developed their own independent practices. Some say there was a cultural exchange. Others argue that Nubia's barbers were pioneers in their own right. You lean closer as the visitor demonstrates how a small curved blade can remove an infected tooth with less pain than traditional methods. A young man volunteers, grimacing but trusting. The barber nods appreciatively, but also points out the limitations. Precision comes with knowing the body and the person, not just the tool. There's a hum of agreement. Then, the traveler pulls out a thin bronze needle and demonstrates a technique resembling acupuncture or cupping, claiming it eases headaches and fatigue. You notice the barber's eyes narrow slightly. This is uncharted territory for him, a blend of healing arts and mystery. But then the barber pulls out a small pouch of crushed herbs and explains how his people treat headaches with incense and scalp massages. The visitor raises an eyebrow, admitting that every culture has its secrets. The crowd buzzes with questions. Can barbers heal broken bones? Can they read the future from hair patterns? Can a bad haircut cause illness? Someone actually asks this. The barber smiles at that one. Only if you're unlucky. You laugh along with the others. As the night deepens, the visitor offers to exchange knowledge. The barber agrees cautiously, signaling a handshake that feels like the start of a secret pact. Before he leaves, the traveler asks about the social role of barbers. What power do they hold beyond the blade? The barber's answer is simple. We are watchers, keepers, and sometimes the only ones who know the truth behind closed doors. The traveler nods thoughtfully, packing his tools. As you watch him walk away into the moonlit night, you realize that the ancient barber's role was evolving. No longer just stylist or spy, but healer and diplomat, a bridge between worlds. And as the village settles into quiet, you can't help but wonder what stories will be told about this night centuries from now. Because every era has its secrets, and every barber, their hands full. Morning arrives like a gentle whisper, the air filled with the sweet scent of crushed lotus and the distant calls of waterbirds. You find the barber preparing for a different kind of service today, not with scissors or razors, but with stories. A circle of elders, young mothers, and curious children have gathered around the hut, sitting on woven mats and sun-warmed stones. The barber holds a long, slender stick carved with intricate patterns, his storytelling staff. He begins by tracing the symbols on the staff, each one a key to a tale, a secret, a lesson passed down through generations. His voice drops to a soothing murmur as he recounts the legend of the first barber, a figure both feared and revered, who tamed wild spirits by shaping their hair into protective charms. The crowd listens intently, eyes wide and faces softening with wonder. You realize that barbers were more than hair artists or healers. They were historians, philosophers, and shamans. They carried culture not just on skin, but in words and memory. One story stands out, a tale of a barber who saved a village from drought by cutting the hair of the river goddess's statue, releasing trapped water. The barber's courage and precision turned a crisis into a blessing. You can almost feel the river's flow quicken as the story unfolds. Historians still argue whether such stories are myth or historical record, but their impact is undeniable. These tales shaped social bonds, reinforced moral codes, and kept ancient wisdom alive. The barber's voice softens as he shifts to quieter talus whispers of secret rituals performed under moonlight, of barbers who could read futures in the curls and kinks of hair, or who used special oils to ward off evil spirits. You notice a mother gently rocking her baby, humming a lullaby that seems to echo the barber's words. As the storytelling winds down, the barber invites questions. A young girl asks if hair really holds magic. The barber smiles and replies, "Magic is what you believe in and what you remember." You glance around, sensing that this moment, the sharing of stories, is as important as any haircut or ritual, because stories are how we survive and how we dream. The sun climbs higher, and the crowd disperses slowly, carrying new threads of knowledge woven into their hearts. You thank the barber for this glimpse into the soul of his craft. He nods, already reaching for his tools. There's always another story to cut, another secret to uncover, and you feel lucky to listen. The night wraps around you like a thick blanket, muffling the city's usual clamor into a distant murmur. You sit alone in your stall, the flicker of an oil lamp casting shadows that dance and stretch on the walls. Your fingers trace the contours of your tools, a comb carved from ivory, scissors sharp enough to slice through silk, and a tiny mirror that once belonged to your grandfather. The weight of responsibility presses down on you like the desert sun at noon. The first client arrives just as the stars begin their slow march across the sky. She's a priestess from the temple, draped in linen that shimmers faintly with threads of gold. Her hair is a cascade of coils, dark and thick, woven with tiny beads that catch the light like drops of midnight rain. She requests a style that symbolizes protection and wisdom, a delicate network of braids, forming a lattice across her scalp. As you work, she speaks softly of the city's unrest, the shifting alliances, and the fragile peace that holds only by a thread. You hold more power than you know, she says, her voice almost a whisper. In every braid, every twist, you weave the city's fate. You nod, the words settling deep in your mind. As the night deepens, more clients are of each, bringing stories and secrets wrapped in their hair. A soldier seeking courage, a scholar craving clarity, a mother wanting safety for her children. With every cut and braid, you feel the invisible threads connecting these lives, pulling tighter in a web you never imagined you'd help spin. You pause, glancing at the small serpent charm nestled in your pouch. The Ouroboros' endless cycles, beginnings and endings. The city's story is still being written. Historians still argue whether hairdressers in ancient Nubia were merely craftsmen or subtle influencers within social and political spheres. Tonight, in the quiet intimacy of your stall, you know you are both. You finish the last braid as the first light of dawn peeks over the horizon. The city is waking, unaware of the silent revolution threaded through its streets and scalp. You lean back, exhausted but oddly hopeful, because sometimes the softest touch changes everything. The city is stirring again, but today feels different, like the breath before a plunge into cold water. You notice it in the way the morning light strikes the rooftops, sharper and colder than usual, and in the hurried footsteps that echo down the narrow alleys. Word spreads fast. The king's brother has called a gathering at the Great Hall. Nobles, priests, and warriors will convene to decide the future. Your stall fills quickly with nervous clients, each seeking a cut or braid that will signal their allegiance or perhaps hide their true intentions. You work with deliberate care, crafting hairstyles that carry layered meaning, skirls that suggest loyalty, twists that whisper dissent, and braids that declare neutrality. Your fingers move almost on their own, weaving a silent language that only the initiated understand. A young soldier arrives, fresh-faced, but with eyes too old for his years. He asks for a cut that speaks of bravery, but also caution. You oblige, shaping his hair into tight waves that ripple backward, like a shield raised against unseen enemies. As you finish, he leans in, voice low. The brothers' forces are gathering near the border. There will be a clash soon. You feel the weight of his words settle like dust on your shoulders. Outside, the city seems to hold its breath. The streets are quieter, the markets less crowded. Everyone waits for news, for action, for the inevitable storm. You catch a glimpse of a young woman weaving through the crowd, her hair braided in the ancient Nubian style of rebellion, the same patterns your grandfather once taught you. She nods briefly in your direction, a silent thank you or warning. You're not sure which. Historians still argue whether these braids were simply cultural markers or deliberate acts of resistance, but today you see them as armor. As night falls, you close your stall and walk toward the Great Hall. The air is thick with tension, but also something else, see a flicker of hope. Because in this city of secrets, power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the strands of hair, in the patterns we wear, and the stories we choose to tell. And tonight, you are both storyteller and witness. The dawn breaks slow and golden, spilling soft light across the city's worn stones and bustling streets. You stand outside your stall, feeling the quiet before the storm. The weight of everything, massages, alliances, secret settles deep into your bones. Today, the city will shift again, and you'll be right in the middle, weaving its future strand by strand. Clients come and go, but none stay long. They all have places to be, decisions to make, battles to prepare for. You catch fragments of conversations, a whispered promise here, a veiled threat there, but mostly, there's a tense silence, the calm before the tide. Your hands move automatically, braiding, trimming, shaping. Each cut is a word in an unspoken dialogue, each braid a knot in the fabric of power. You catch yourself smiling softly at the irony. Who would have thought a barber could wield such influence? A final visitor arrives, a quiet man with eyes like polished onyx, his hair styled in a pattern that speaks of both wisdom and war. He nods to you, a silent acknowledgement of the roles you both play in this unfolding drama. As he leaves, you step back, surveying your stall, the tools of your trade shining faintly in the morning light. The city around you hums with anticipation, alive with stories yet to be told. Historians still debate how much impact these quiet influencers truly had. But you know the truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's braided in the shadows. You sit down, breathing deeply, the scent of herbs and dust mingling in the air. The future feels uncertain, yes, but also full of possibility. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've traveled with me through whispered streets and shaded courtyards, where the soft touch of a comb held more power than the sharpest sword. We've traced the silent revolutions braided into the very fabric of an ancient city, where every curl and twist told stories of loyalty, rebellion, and survival. As your eyes grow heavy, imagine the gentle rustle of hair moving in a quiet breeze, the warmth of sunlit stones beneath your fingertips, and the steady pulse of a city that never truly sleeps because its secrets are always alive. Feel the calm settling around you like a soft shawl, the weight of the day melting away, leaving only the slow, peaceful rhythm of your own breath. Let the stories fade gently, like the last glow of twilight, until you drift into a deep and restful sleep. Tomorrow, the city will wake, and with it, new stories will begin. But for now, rest easy, knowing you've walked through history's quietest corridors, where even the smallest voices echo across time. Sweet dreams,